I really want to just share my research with you. It's moved on. I did present last year in relation to what students in Oklahoma in particular were saying to me in relation to their experience of a course. I taught them sustainable construction, so they were giving me feedback. I suppose the challenge for me in relation to that, teaching Oklahomian students, some from Texas, sustainable construction and the attitude in that deep south to construction, to sustainability was a bit of a challenge. Some of their feedback was it was enlightening. I took it from a perspective of teaching the principles of sustainability and using then the applications of it to actually enforce those principles. And some of the research I'm presenting to you today will kind of links what students are saying, links what the academics are saying, and links what industry is looking for, and just trying that together. This is kind of my guilty pleasure in terms of research. I enjoy doing this stuff. It's not funded in any shape or form, so I do this kind of ticking along the side just to keep me informed in terms of what it is I should be doing. So it's work in progress. I've moved on from where I was last year in terms of getting access to the academics and getting access to the industry. So I want to just share that with you. And it is a complex area. It's sustainability for everyone in the audience today and myself. We all have an understanding of sustainability in our own world. That's based on our journey to date, whatever that has been. Professionals in the built environment will have a perception of or an understanding of what it is. Clients, when they're looking for sustainable projects, have a notion of what it is they want to achieve. So as people involved in society, it's different things to different people. And we all have our own definition of that. And I think that's right, personally. As for someone living in Hong Kong, they're going to have a different attitude to sustainability to someone living in Leeds in the UK, for example. So again, getting your head around that. I have a student currently who's looking at sustainable procurement, and he has gone out into the field to talk to practitioners out in the field, and he has asked them the question around what is their view on sustainability, where are they at it as professionals. So we're actually putting that material together, and hopefully maybe at SEES next year we'll be able to report on that. I was in Hong Kong in June at a conference, the World Sustainable Built Environment Conference, and it was really a gathering of all international players. The first day of the conference actually was the day that Donald decided to tell us all that he wasn't signing up to the Paris Accord. So that resonated in the audience. The former Executive Secretary of the UN, Christina Figueres, actually thanked Donald Trump as an American. She said, what you've done is actually put sustainability back on the agenda because it had gone quiet. I thought that was a really positive response, that actually, he's making such a rumpus about what he's doing that actually others are saying, well, actually we need to pull together and actually move sustainability on. For me as an academic, education is really important. What we do with our students, what we engage them in, and I take an approach with my students in terms of I challenge them to think about things rather than just give them pure examples. I often get them to come back with examples to me and try and consolidate their information. So in terms of graduate attributes, I would feel that as a built environment educator, we need to actually look at how we engage our students and use the research to back up what it is we're doing with them. Some reasons for inaction through the literature, a view that climate change is not happening. We've heard that in terms of positionings over the last day and a bit. It's overstated. It's a tiny part of the problem. It's not my problem. It's somebody else's problem. The market will rectify it. Some take the view here. The problem is too big for me to influence. I would actually disagree with that. I would say to my students, if you make one small difference, you're helping in some shape or form. You might change attitudes to that. So there is, I suppose, some people think, you know, I couldn't be bothered in terms of engaging in this. It's really nothing to do with me. The context in terms of sustainability is very important. I'm looking at it from, you know, what students should be doing in built environments, but I know higher education institutions are starting to engage. They're starting to engage and to have, you know, green campuses. They're starting to engage students across all the disciplines to actually have some element in relation to that. That is highly complex, and again, some of my research will show in relation to that, you know, the complexity around it and the views around it. Okay, so again, just that emphasises this a bit forward. At program development level, you know, we have programs in our own institution, and I did a scan across all those programs, and what I looked to find was, is sustainability being mentioned? Are there program learning outcomes that mention sustainability? Are there any specific embedded modules that have sustainability? You know, what is the approach? Are there standalone modules like construction management, for example, our 4-year degree program? They do a module in sustainable development, but we haven't moved it on in terms of be all-encompassing. It's really looking at urban drainage. So it's, you know, so you know, again, what we do in terms of that. There is a drive from the professional bodies, the accrediting bodies now, to actually put a requirement in. So if you take the American accrediting bodies like ACCE, which is the construction management body, they require it to be embedded in the program. So an overall learning outcome, they require to have it in. Hence, if you take the Oklahoma example that I teach on, I'm teaching that module because there's a requirement now to have sustainability embedded. There's some of the areas from our own institution in terms of types of curricula or modules that actually are identified. You know, so the built environment area or engineering area are looking at energy, buildings, transportation. You know, the planners are looking at the natural environment. The technology is linked across a lot of different areas. Some of the humanities are looking at, and some of the engineering areas are looking at social development, and even the business areas are looking at business innovation. So you can see there certainly is work being done. In terms of the AEC sector, okay, the feedback from the research I've done is that industry wants graduates that can hit the ground running. That's the term they use. So they want a complete graduate. And I don't think there's any institution out there that can produce an undergraduate that is complete. Okay? One of my colleagues was telling me an interesting thing about actually expertise and developing expertise. And he interviewed 29 people from industry, and they reckoned they were 20% ready for industry when they finished their degree. That's an interesting feedback from people who've been in the industry for a long period of time. That whole notion of lifelong learning and engaging and learning as you go was what he said. So we can't produce the complete graduate, you know, because industry and different sectors of industry have different approaches. The industry wants soft skills. We want people to be able to communicate and collaborate, you know, and embedding that in the program. Adaptable, okay, and then cutting edge knowledge and practice. So they should be getting that cutting edge knowledge and materials and practices, and they should be bringing them to the workplace. You know, that's what the industry is telling us they want. You know, so I believe that the complete package is not out there. So the research itself, I suppose, you know, the issue is the AEC sector makes the point that graduates do not have the required skill, knowledge, competence when it comes to sustainability. That's the feedback. Okay, so our research wanted to look at, to investigate what the AEC sector considers as appropriate levels of knowledge and competency and skills with respect to sustainability, and what does education say, what does the built environment section say, and we're not complete there. This is, as I say, is work in progress, but we're making inroads in relation to that. Ideally, overall, what we want to create is a framework that can be used to support academics in terms of what it is they should approach. That should be an adaptable framework, because as we develop over time, that's going to change a little and be fluid. So again, we don't know what's around the corner in terms of where society is going. So this part of the research was quantitative. Survey went out with a number of closed questions and one open question. The respondents were asked to indicate, what they actually felt in relation to it, but also they were asked would they be interested in the follow-up interviews. 312 respondents from across 15 countries, 97% reliability, so we dropped a few of those surveys in terms of the way the questions were answered, etc. So the data we felt was acceptable for analysis. I suppose the framework on which we work nowadays is ethics driven. You have to get permission to do surveys, etc. And what I noticed about several of the US respondents, they wanted to know by email, did we have ethical approval? Which I thought was really, really interesting from my perspective. First time I'd encountered that. So that was quite interesting in terms of data. In terms of a comparison across, what I've structured there is a rank order in terms of what is sustainable knowledge or competencies that people expect. So the industry is ranked 1 to 9, and then the actual education from a student perspective and from an academics perspective is the rankings. And you can see some interesting findings there, in terms of the academics. Principles of green building construction is what they're about in terms of delivering it. In terms of the industry, which I thought was really, biomimicry is really important to them. I suspect, again, the next phase of the research is to try and explore that. That's around their lack of knowledge around it. They want the actual graduate to contribute to them in terms of what they know about it or what they've actually experienced in education. But again, that has to be explored further. But you can see, the different levels, what's high, life cycle cost analysis of green buildings. Both are very much the same in terms of the level of where they sit. So this is interesting findings to give us a platform to go further on. One of the questions we asked was in terms of green building assessment tools and what was the position in relation to it. As I say, it was the responses were widespread. So in terms of LEED and BREEAM being the two highest. But you can see there are other green building assessment tools being actually identified, Green Globes, Living Building Challenge, and while the percentages are quite low in terms of those, there is an actual understanding and knowledge of what's available elsewhere. So which would indicate to me that people actually are aware of the rating systems or the systems that are in use across the line. Some feedback from the AEC sector in that open question. Would like to see some team building approaches included in programs where students get to apply sustainability principles, where they would apply themselves to solve a project that included sustainability solutions. So again, industry is asking that people come out with those skills to be able to come up with sustainable solutions. Allow them to come up with sustainable solutions through real projects, so they're encouraging us possibly to actually engage students in doing real projects or simulated projects maybe, which that is possibly a good thing. Graduates should have the necessary skills to implement sustainable practice. Again, to hit the ground running, to be able to actually implement whatever it is that the particular company is actually engaged with. We rely on graduates to address the knowledge gaps that we have. Again, that's reinforcing the position of industry wanting the graduates to come out with cutting edge knowledge. There should be some incentives to employing graduates where they can learn the cutting edge applications of new practices. So again, they're really, really good findings in terms of the feedback that actually people took the time to actually offer us, and I think that's quite good for us to know that position. Some feedback from the educators. Well, the educators came from a different stance, understanding knowledge of sustainable principles, need to include aspects of sustainability in all courses. Again, that would indicate to me that this respondent is working in a program where maybe it's not across the piece, that the construction methods or the construction technology or just sustainable practices are not being actually looked at in terms of the way it's delivered. I certainly know in the construction program that I am, I wouldn't be able to tell a colleague that maybe they should be thinking about sustainable practices in what they deliver. You know, that's just the culture of our program in terms of the way we do that. What graduates lack in experience is made up with their innovative and creative approach to solving problems. So I think we beat ourselves up sometimes in terms of the graduates going out and lacking skill. I think we are actually engaging them in more soft skills in what we do, so there's more opportunity for them now to be able to show that and to be able to communicate more effectively. And then the final one, it's about developing competent graduates, and sustainable knowledge is part of those competencies. I think that's to me is the important one to take it, that there is an awareness out there that we actually need to be embedding those competencies in the graduates going out. So I've really mentioned these points here in terms of the outcomes from the research thus far. Continues to be a gap between industry and education expectations and perceptions. And I suppose, you know, to me, an element coming out of that, we're living in a global world, but maybe the solutions are local. So we need to have an awareness of the global, but maybe how we offer them within our own context needs to be that context specific. Need for greater effort to be made to embed sustainability in built environment higher education. And what was really interesting when we did an analysis of the feedback from across the world, because this was a worldwide study, was that there's similar problems in the US to UK to Ireland to, you know, Europe. So there's similar issues that we're dealing with in the global society in which we're living today. Future research, well, the qualitative is the next phase, is to get out there and do interviews and build on that quantitative data that we have, and I suppose to report on that in terms of going forward. To report is also in terms of what students are saying, and again to continue that pre and post course evaluation with students. What's their perception beforehand, what's their perception afterwards in terms of what they've experienced, and to do more comparisons across the groups. Okay. So I'll just let you read that. It's from Derek Jensen. It's quite interesting. To me it's fairly profound in the world we're living at today in terms of, you know, sustainability and what rights we have and maybe what responsibilities we have. So just to have your own thoughts on that would be interesting. But thank you for listening.